All right, returning now to our top story, the crisis in Syria. Of course, I'm joined here in the studio by Michael Stevens. He's a researcher with the Royal United Services Institute. Michael, thank you so much for being on Al Jazeera once again.
Hi.
Now, we heard from the Interior Minister in Syria, the Information Minister rather, who said that this was the final battle. How do you think this is going to play out? First, domestically, we're seeing increasingly what looks like urban warfare in Damascus right now. How difficult do you think it'll be for the government to gain the upper hand after what happened on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, I don't think actually it is the final battle. I think there's a long way to go yet. And I was just on the phone to someone in Damascus who told me that there were large swathes of the city which were still under Assad's control, despite some of the gains that the rebels had made there. And I think, it's important to remember that the rebel forces at the moment don't possess the kind of firepower and military hardware necessary to cause an outright victory, not just in Damascus, but in Homs, Idlib, Hama, Deir ez-Zor, and all the other major areas.
So you don't think they have the momentum, they have what it takes to maintain this momentum that they've gained?
They need to keep their supply lines open and not, sabotaged, be that by Hezbollah, by Syrian loyalists or Shabiha. And from what I've been able to understand, they've not been able to fight back Shabiha units in Damascus, which is an extremely problematic, event, especially for civilians, because Shabiha tend to go in and target only civilians. So I think for the Free Syrian Army, yes, they've made some gains. Yesterday was a big boost for them. But really, the overall point still remains, which is that the main weakness for Assad is defection from the armed forces. Now, if people defect in large numbers, as may well happen following the deaths of Shawkat and others, then the fulcrum will swing in their way.
But how likely is that the Syrian army will disintegrate, as we saw in Iraq? That would be bad news, in fact, even for the opposition forces, if the army were to disintegrate.
I think that would leave a very, very serious security gap, actually, and that would worry Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey even would be extremely worried. You would have, movements of populations and weapons that were not controlled, and this is something actually that the Americans and the Israelis in particular have been very, very concerned about. I don't think that it's going to completely disintegrate. I don't think you'll see a disbanding of the military in quite as an extremist fashion as you did in Iraq back in 2003. However, there are, numerous unconfirmed stories that there have been huge numbers of defections in the last 24 hours.
Now, internationally, of course, there's now a sense of urgency, of immediacy to find a solution to this crisis in Syria. The Security Council is meeting, but no sign that Russians are going to change their stance. What could they possibly come up with today when they meet later?
I think the Russians are probably thinking the same thing. What can we possibly come up with to get out of this rather ridiculous situation that we've got ourselves into? The UN monitoring mission allows them to at least appear as if they're using the international platform to try and advance peace. They're going to, be encouraging a negotiated process at this point. Behind closed doors, Moscow was always quite open to the idea of a negotiated transfer of power, but over a much longer period of time than may be the case now. I still think that there are, quite a few days, weeks, even months left for this conflict to go. It's not going to end tomorrow. So the Russians have some time, but the urgency is clearly there. There's been a serious wobble in their ally, who they've stood steadfast by. If he collapses, their position collapses, and so does their strategic foothold in the region.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for your insight. Of course, we look forward to talking to you later in the day when the UN Security Council meets to discuss Syria.